Hey, what's going on guys? Arekkz here, welcome back to another video for Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and this one is going to be another video about an end game topic. So much like the other video, if you do not want to know about this, if you don't want to see anything relating to the end game weapon upgrade / augment system, then now would be the time to step away. This is your spoiler warning. If you are still here after I finish this speech, then that's on you. Cool? Alright, so in Iceborne there is a new endgame augment system. Of course, if you guys played Monster Hunter World, you'll be familiar with the weapon augment system from before, in that when you got a weapon to the end of the upgrade tree, you're then able to augment it with things like attack boosts, affinity increases, defense, health augments, that kind of stuff. Well, that system is still present in Iceborne, but it's got a new twist to it, should I say. So we then go to the augment option and we jump over and check out, say, the Velkhana Charge Blade. This is an example right here. You can see that every single weapon has a number of slots. As you can see over here, the Charge Blade by default has 3. Now this is, I guess to a degree, kind of like decoration slots, armor slots, in that different augments now carry a slot value. So you can see that the attack increase requires 3 slots, meanwhile, say, the affinity one only takes up 2. So in this situation, I could put on, say, affinity and defense, because that's 2 and 1, affinity and, say, element or status effect up, that kind of thing. However, it is also worth noting that you can increase the number of slots. You can see, of course, here that you can expand the number of slots for augmentations, and these do obviously require lots of endgame materials. If you see my video on the Guiding Lands, if you haven't, I'll link it down below. The Guiding Lands is basically where you go to get your endgame materials. There's obviously stuff here that I still haven't even encountered because I'm still kind of working my way through endgame, so it's fair to say I haven't even been able to actually use some of this stuff, but you can see how it works. Effectively, you have the capacity to increase slots for your weapons, and you can actually see over there at the top, you can see the level. You can see that if I were to use this slot upgrade, it would then level up the weapon, and that would be the capacity. So you can't indefinitely add slots. You couldn't just suddenly be like, hey, I'm going to add 500 slots to this and just stack a million attack. That would be crazy. But you can expand a little bit more to the point where I could then, say, have 4 slots. I could then do attack and defense, or attack and element status up, that kind of thing. Of course, some of these are ones you are familiar with. Attack increase is much like you've seen before. Affinity increase, defense increase, slot, and health regen. One of the new ones in Iceborne is element / status effect up. This will, of course, slightly increase the status and elemental effect damage of your ammo and your equipment, which is really cool because, again, I've said this many times. You guys are probably sick of me saying it, but elemental stuff in Iceborne is just really good, right? Elemental builds are great. They have buffed elemental damage heavily, so this is actually going to be something nice to mess around with. I've always loved status builds, always loved elemental builds. I kind of just like mixing things up and doing things differently, so this is really cool. However, there is also the option for custom upgrades. Now, this does not apply to every weapon, so in this situation, something like the Velkhana Charge Blade has a very unique look to it, and therefore, you can't mess with it, right? You can, of course, roll back your upgrades if you don't like them, but that is how it is. However, if we go back from there and pick something like a hammer, which in this situation is the Kurogane, this is the rarity 11, it's as far as you can go, but you can see that I can actually go down to custom upgrades, and there's a little bit more I can do to this weapon. If we go over here, you can see that I can put on a few additional mods here. Now, obviously, again, they take different parts, but you have the Kuluyaku mod, the Puke mod, or the Great Gyros mod, and what you'll actually notice if you look over on the preview, the display preview, if I do this mod, it actually changes the way the weapon looks. So if we go and throw on that weapon for a second, so you can actually see the difference. You can see this is, of course, what the default Kurogane looks like, just a regular iron, you know, nothing to write home about. But if we then scroll down to the Great Gyros mod, you can see that not only does it increase the attack, because by default this has 1,352, throwing on the Great Gyros mod pushes that up to 1,357. Not a huge increase, but bear in mind you can also stack these. So if I throw this on, and I upgrade that, you can now see I've got a new suite of upgrades. I'm now on to upgrade level 2. Now, there are, again, limits. You can see over there that the Kurogane, it's got 1 block in the level. Of course, if I was to do a second mod, that would max out the level. That would take it to the limit. But you can, of course, see that by doing this, there are options to increase the affinity slightly, increase things like, you know, sometimes elemental damage or attack, different things like that. And again, it would change the look of it. So if I back up from the smithy for a second, you can see that my hammer now has that sort of gyros cap to the back of it, which is kind of cool. Now, this obviously doesn't solve the problem of turning, say, ugly weapons into really cool looking weapons. That is kind of a shame. That would have been a really nice thing. That could have been the answer to why some of the weapons in Iceborne look kind of the way they do. If they made it so that you could then throw custom upgrades on to actually return them to their original look, that would have been really cool. I was kind of hoping when I saw this that take something like the Glavenus Greatsword, which used to be amazing in the previous games and now looks horrible in World, maybe I thought if they threw custom upgrades on, you could then finally make it look like how it's supposed to. Unfortunately, that's not what custom upgrades do. That is not the purpose of them. It is still a means to, you know, slightly increase the damage, slightly increase the stats on your weapon, whilst slightly changing the way that it looks, but it is still a cool system. Because if you do end up having one of those weapons, and some of those weapons are good, some of the ones that just kind of go from the iron tree or from the bone tree, and you get to the point where you can then slightly change the way they look. I mean, like throwing a Bambaro hood on the back of this is actually kind of cool, because the Bambaro weapons by default are down the bone path, but if you mix them in this situation, they go down the iron path. So, you know, you can get some interesting looks. But that's basically how it works. Of course, if you don't like it, you can remove the custom upgrade and you get your materials back, which is quite nice. You can see I have the Great Gyros mod there. To give you guys another example, I can go over and pick up, say, the Ogre's Jaw. This is the Greatsword. Show you the same principle for like custom upgrades. I can throw on the, you know, there's different ones here sometimes. You can change the look of them. But I've got the Gyros parts again, so I can throw that on. And of course, then it gives me options to throw on different parts. Again, I'm going to remove that, but you can see that different weapons have different options. This weapon also, you'll notice, has 4 slots in it by default, and of course if I throw in the extra slot, that will push that up to 5. So some weapons have different slots on the augment front. So in this one, I could actually feasibly get attack and affinity on there, assuming I threw in an extra slot. So different weapons, different levels, different weapons, different slots, but there's actually quite a lot of stuff you can do in the endgame augment system. But obviously in order to do that, you need lots of endgame materials, which you get from the Guiding Lands, so that, my friends, is where you need to go next. Again, if you guys haven't seen that video, I'll link it down below. It explains what the Guiding Lands is, how the new system works, but that was a quick look at the new augment system. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. As always, be sure to keep it locked because I've got plenty more Iceborne stuff coming your way. I really hope you guys enjoyed that video. Remember to hit that subscribe button and also click on the little bell icon to turn on notifications so you don't miss my next upload. Also, don't forget, you can check out 269 and Paradise Central streaming over on Twitch 6 days a week. You can find a link to the multi-stream in the description box down below. Be sure to drop by and get involved. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.